Hello and welcome. I thought that I would jump on and talk about an interview which was a recent interview which was between Beth Rigby, Sky News, and Keir Starmer of the UK. And the reason that I wanted to talk about it is because I believe that Keir is essentially, this is a setup. It's to try and humanise Keir, it's to try and make him more relatable. And they've chosen Beth Rigby because, well, one would presume he feels comfortable in her presence. And he does seem to. I mean, on that level, it kind of works that he is more relaxed. But Beth Rigby's nobody's fool. She also calls Angela Rayner Ange. So one would presume that she's quite chummy with at least two people at the top of the Labour Party behind the scenes. And it's this odd dynamic in attempting to humanise Keir, with Beth being, in my opinion, actually quite skilled and a little bit sneaky in what she's doing, that I'm not totally sure that Keir picks up on. And there are some revealing things. And what I've done is I've chosen a smattering of clips of that interview to sort of highlight some of the bits where I think the dynamic is interesting. We do get insights into Keir, and in some ways it is a slightly different version of him. But does it rescue him? Is it likely to make everyone think, "Wow, this is wonderful. This is great. He should stay in that role." I mean, spoiler, no. But the dynamic and the insights that we get, I believe, are quite fascinating. So what I thought I'd do is to play you some of these snippets, and I've started off here by calling this one trash talking, because what we're going to get to is Keir essentially responding to Beth's questions about Donald Trump being, well, you know, poking fun at Keir's expense. So let's begin.
Because you've invested a lot in that relationship. But in recent weeks, he's insulted you, he's demeaned you, he's poked fun at you. You are the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And for many people in the UK, many people listening to this podcast or watching it, insulting you is like insulting our country. Do you understand why some people feel like that?
I do.
So, what I thought I'd do here is just to interject, because I've said, his performances at PMQs, I'm not the only person to say this, particularly recently, have been an insult to the system. I think that parliamentary questions are really important. I think it is a stage, a place where we can get an interesting dynamic. Things can be teased out, but Keir's just flat refusal to answer anything is beyond the pale. It's I call it a joke, except that it isn't funny. So I think that's a bit of an insult. In terms of Donald Trump insulting Keir Starmer, insulting inverted commas, depends what you think of Keir. And I guess it also depends what you think of Donald Trump, in the sense that if people who really dislike Trump may therefore reflexively go, well, he shouldn't be saying anything about this country. And I understand that. Some people who really like Donald Trump may well be saying, yeah, good on you, particularly, of course, if they don't like Keir Starmer. And quite a lot of people don't seem to like, to put it mildly, the way that Keir is leading the country. So it's interesting that she opens with that. But let's then listen to what Keir has got to say in response to that.
There's a clear difference, therefore, of opinion between me and President Trump. My own view is that a lot of what he's said and done has been to put pressure on me to change my mind. But I'm not going to do so, because I'm the British Prime Minister and I have to act in the British national interest.
Do you
And
think
I will
he
always act in the
underestimated
British
you?
national interest.
Do you think he underestimated you because you'd worked really hard at the relationship? I had followed you around. I remember being in the White House and you came
I'm going to stop there. Keir's got a little smile on his face. See, he likes this. She's going to, because she's complimenting him. He knows the area she's about to get into, and she's complimenting him, or beginning to, and he likes that, and he's comfortable here. And I think this is very interesting. You don't see Keir like this with too many people, particularly if, journalists.
Out, and you were pleased because he'd backed NATO and Article 5. He'd signalled he was going to do a good deal for trade. You were really personally proud that you felt like you had found this connection. You tried to accommodate him. Do you think he took that as weakness from you?
Well, I wanted a good relationship. I'm not going to pretend otherwise.
Yeah.
I still want a good relationship. As we work our way through this, I'm sure that is possible. But I want to be equally clear. I'm not going to waver on this. I'm not going to back down. I'm absolutely clear about the values and the principles that I'm applying here. And anybody who thinks that I'm going to act in anything other than the British national interest.
He says British. I'm sorry, Keir, but you do. You know the sausages, remember? The British interests. Yes, we're probably all brats in your mind, all of us who question your great wisdom, the British interests. Anyway, but so he talks about this, and he's going to say this again, and we'll pick up on this again, that he's painting himself as somebody who's doing all of this for the British interest, national interest. What does that mean, though? I wonder.
Human. I mean, it might.
And so I wanted to add this in because I think it's fair to say that quite a lot of people, a fair old percentage of the population generally seem to get the impression that Keir just doesn't like them. It's this odd authoritarian vibe that he gives off and puts into practice at times. So does he actually like it? So what does he mean by the British interest? So I'm guessing he's talking about the connections with other countries. So he's talking about the world stage, so to speak, his relationship with the other so-called leaders.
I mean, it must make you bristle. It would make me bristle if someone spoke about me like that.
Now, I've put this in because this is where she's really good. And Keir really seems to respond to this. And it's kind of cheeky, but it's very conversational. And, it's like, well, it would make me mad. It's having a cup of tea or a glass of wine with Keir, whatever it might be. And he does respond to this. And we get some insights that you don't normally get. And, of course, it's all puffball stuff. But it's still interesting, in my opinion. You get a different insight into how this guy can act differently depending on how he's approached, because he doesn't like being challenged. And even although, on a first glance, on the surface level skim, it looks like she is. In my opinion, she's not. But anyway.
I think I understand what's happening. It's to put pressure on me.
Yeah.
And you notice his response is more conversation. I understand what he's doing. He's, trying to put pressure on me. And I think that's more conversational, Keir.
In different ways.
Than he was and he is.
But that pressure isn't going to make me waver. It's not going to make me abandon my principles or values.
He mentions principles and values here. And what I'd like to understand is, what are those principles and values? He's going to talk about them again. And, well, we can take a guess, but I don't think the principles and values so far have been aligned with what many of us think should be his principles and values.
That's just the one.
We'll
Prime
find
Minister,
out.
I've got one quick more question, which is about Peter Mandelson. When I looked at that vetting document, the continued friendship with Epstein, the sackings from Blair and Brown administrations, I don't get why you put him back into post. Surely your instinct was, I don't want this guy near my government. Are you angry at yourself that you maybe didn't follow your instinct?
So it's... this is a helpful question because it tees Keir up to give the answer he's going to give. Angry, frustrated. Yes, of course. You know, and I've said here a better question is, but why didn't you? Tell us why you didn't. What was that moment? Why did you make that decision? And I've listened to all the interview, and I don't think it's there, or if it's there, it's not clear to me. But anyway, at least we're on the subject.
Well, on the back of that due diligence, questions were put to him, answers were given, which in my view weren't truthful.
Now, again, pausing it there, questions were put to him, answers were given, which were, in his opinion, Keir's opinion, not truthful. When did this happen? What does that actually mean? It's one reading of that is that he's saying those answers were not truthful, and so why did he go ahead with the appointment? Now, of course, if he was challenged on that, he'd probably say, "Oh no, I meant, I found that out later." But if you're doing real due diligence, then with such an appointment, then if you did find that out, when did you find that out? And he knew some stuff before. We've already ascertained that. But if you did find that out, then why didn't you just haul him out of there? There's so many unanswered. I don't think we'll get to the bottom of it, frankly. I think this is one of those things that people will just hope will be buried in the mists of time. I have a little friend here.
But
so let's listen to this next
bit.
bit.
Back and answer your question. I am frustrated. Nobody has been harder on me in relation to the mistake I made there than me. And I'll tell you for why. I've spent years trying to deal with violence against women and girls. And as I look back at it now and the mistake I make, I've been really hard on myself. In the immediate days after this all came out, I was particularly hard on myself. So, yeah, everybody else was criticising, I guess, all that. But nobody was criticising me more than myself. I'm not...
Well, he couldn't have been listening, really. I think probably you'll find you've got to run for your money in terms of criticising you, Keir. So let's continue.
Make that a mitigation or an excuse. But... I know I made a mistake.
I can see that you feel that.
Yeah, and I mean, so once more, Beth's going but I can see that you feel that. No, maybe she can see it in that moment. Let's be fair to Beth Rigby. Maybe she can, but at the same time, one has got to question whether that's also a bit of a strategy to just, the empathy, the cosy fireside chat. And that's a shame, Keir, that you beat yourself up to that extent, but it's also a shame that you just did this in the first place. And again, you're not alone in being annoyed with you. I'll put it that way around.
I know that after nearly 20 years fighting violence against women and girls, I made a mistake there. And I hate the fact I made that mistake. And I dwell on it. I beat myself up about it. It's certainly not a mistake I'd ever repeat.
Well, I don't know, because you don't seem to understand how you made it or why it was made. So I'm not sure what the learning is there, genuinely. Is it that it just all came out? Would you just have continued with him being there if things hadn't gone awry?
But there's no criticism anybody else can level at me that will be as harsh as the criticism I've dished out for myself.
Yeah, so I've just said, just don't be too sure.
What advice, this is the final question, what advice would Keir Starmer of March 2026, this moment, give to Keir Starmer of 2024 as he contemplated walking through that famous black door?
I would say you have to rise to the challenge. You have to realise it's going to be a bumpy road. You can't fix everything as quickly as you think, but you have to be really clear what is it you're trying to achieve. And in the end, I will be judged at the next election on whether or not people feel better off, whether they can pay their bills, but not just that, whether they actually feel their life's a bit better, they can do what they want to do with their families, that they don't feel held back in the way that they have done for far too many years. I understand why people are frustrated. I'll be judged on whether our public services are better. I'm really pleased the health service confidence levels have gone up. And I'll be judged by whether people feel more safe and secure.
Now, it is, so we will be judged on that. And I think that the fact that it comes in at the end, and I think the fact that he's essentially sort of, put that in, and where he's trying to put the focus is the bills, which is understandable, cost of living, safe and secure. Does that go as far as the borders? Does it go as far as actually being able to defend the country, particularly with everything that's going on around the world right now? And I cannot help but get the feeling that what we're seeing here is Keir, with the help of Beth, rightly or wrongly, trying to almost reinvent himself, paint himself as someone who made this mistake. He's beat himself up about it. He'll be remembered. He goes on to say as well, back to what is happening in this conflict, fighting on two fronts, how he leads us all through that. He leads us all through that. My gosh. I hope he's got good advisors in terms of that, because he's not going to have a clue, is he? But most of us wouldn't, to be fair to him. But it's those advisors. So what does he do? How does that actually ultimately play out? And a lot of it is not actually totally in his hands anyway. So this whole sense of him here, bearing his soul, and I felt bad about it, is really peculiar, and it's very odd. And there's times again where rather than humanize him, it makes him sound weak, unfortunately, not because he appears to be demonstrating a conscience and regret, or consciousness. He does seem to demonstrate it at times. He's also sort of demonstrating that. I'm going to have to go in a minute. He's also demonstrating that he is, how would I put this? That he is in a position of caring, of looking after the country. So I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to lead you through all this stuff. I was there. I care about, women and girls and all that stuff that happened. And yet the strong sense from him from the get-go has been that he literally doesn't seem to connect. Anyway, I don't know what you think about that. I'll need to go because I have a very noisy pup here, and someone has woken up before they should have done, and I'm going to have to go and take care of that. But c'est la vie. I hope you find it interesting. Let me know your thoughts in terms of this interview with Beth, and also, do you think Keir, coming in a second, do you think Keir redeems himself here in any shape, way or form? And, it's not a leading question. Genuinely, does he? Do you see some glimpses of humanity? Or is this just a sort of mad scrabble to stay in charge? Later on in that interview, he goes on to also talk about I'll be, or talk about again, I'll be judged, and at the next election. So he's planning to be around, and I think what he's hoping for is that people forget, and sometimes they do, because who knows what's going to happen between now and then. And the more he can stride that world stage and appear to be the great leader, the father figure perhaps in his mind, then we're all going to go, wow, it was a catastrophe, but it wasn't that bad. So let's see, because of course that sense, that patriarchal energy that can sometimes come from him, not in a good way, can mean that what he does is he thinks of himself as this authoritarian leader. And I think that's what we're seeing, and I think that's what he's trying to disguise. But anyway, over to you. I better go and look after this young lad here. So